I'm Richard Ridge, the host of Backstage with Richard Ridge for Broadway World. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest. My guest, David Morse, is one of the greatest actors of his generation, giving us some of the most memorable performances on stage, screen, and TV. If I listed his hundreds of projects, we would be here all day. Some of his highlights include such films as The Green Mile, The Indian Runner, 16 Blocks, The Hurt Locker, World War Z, and Concussion. On television, Saint Elsewhere, House, Escape at Dannemora, John Adams, and Hack. And on stage, The Iceman Cometh, Of Mice and Men, Redwood Curtain, and The Seafarer. Well, now David and Mary Louise Parker reunite for the thrilling Broadway premiere of Paula Vogel's Pulitzer Prize-winning masterpiece, How I Learned to Drive, directed once again by Mark Brokaw. It is my pleasure to introduce David Morse.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. David, first off, it is great to see you.
Happy to see you again.
Now, welcome to Broadway with How I Learned to Drive. You were all in rehearsals when the play was ready to open on Broadway, and then the pandemic happened. How does it feel to finally be here on Broadway with this play?
Well, listen, I'm so grateful. I'm grateful that we could all still be together, for one thing. It was amazing that, it was 25 years ago that we did this play, and it was going to be 23 years for its Broadway debut. And just that we were all together to do it in the first place, then to be shut down, and now 2 years later, we are all somehow still here together. We're grateful to be here together, but also grateful to the audiences for coming out and supporting not just us, but Broadway in general and theater in general. So it's great.
What do you remember about that first performance with a live audience at the Samuel J. Friedman Theater with this show?
Well, it's, we're still doing a play, and it's, all the things that go through being the first time on a stage in front of an audience. And, we've been in our little cocoon of the rehearsal hall, and, you want it to be really emotional and spectacular. And really what we're trying to do is just do a really good show for these people who now are out there behind their masks and not getting to see their faces. So it's, in some ways it's a little different experience, but you just can feel the energy. You can just feel how people are grateful to be out there. And then, that's what we're happy for.
Yeah. Talk about being back in the rehearsal room again after, so many years, and what you discovered this time around with the play. Well,
because we tried to do this play for so long, we try to do, but Mary Louise and I, or Mark, in whatever it was, our schedule was not lining up, or Daryl Roth, who has been with us from the beginning, producing it, just trying to find a theater because Broadway is so busy, she couldn't get a theater. And it's just taken all this time to get here. When we finally actually got to the rehearsals 2 years ago, we suddenly had this feeling of, okay, now we're going to be doing this on Broadway, but do we really need to do it on Broadway? After all these years, are we doing a play just to do a play, or is it important to be doing this play in particular, and for us in particular, be doing this play? And so before rehearsal started, Mary Louise and I and Mark and Paula, of course, the wonderful, amazing Paula Vogel, we got together and we just talked. Is there really a reason for us to be doing this personally and for the world, given how much the world has changed? And we really came to it in a very personal way. And the real difference, I think, between the first production and this one is it is really personally important to each of us to be here working together in this. And I think you can feel it when you see the production.
Yeah, because, the topics that are discussed in the play are talked about more openly now than they were 25 years ago. I mean, people have conversations about all this stuff. Do you think the impact is different now and will continue to be different than what it was when it first opened off Broadway years ago in the late 90s?
It's so hard for me to know, us to know, as being within the play. It's hard to imagine it won't be different. And that was one of the things, just the character that I'm playing, my concern for the character, and how he'll be received in this world because of the men specifically who've been exposed, the men of power, men of whatever, within the church, within the entertainment community, wherever it is. I mean, there's a lot of bad people out there. And I get concerned about this man I'm playing being thrown into a bucket with a lot of bad people. But I think the way Paula has told the story and the love that she's told it with, it will open people's hearts to these characters. And I think that's why I won the Pulitzer Prize and when it was what's so brilliant about this play.
Yeah. Talk about what is it like sharing the stage with Mary Louise Parker?
You know, the first time we did this, I've worked with some really good people, obviously. I've been on the stage. I've done a lot in my life on the stage. And I've worked with terrific people. When I worked with her, and she was young, she was in her early 30s. And at that time, I had never been on a stage with anybody like her. There was a life in her and a freedom to go with wherever the moment goes that I just hadn't experienced before. And in that way. And now, 25 years later, it's even more so. It's deeper. She's just even more amazing than she was then. And every time we are, open our mouths together on the stage or in the rehearsal hall, it's a gift. And I'm fantastically grateful to be with her again.
Yeah, because I remember talking to her and she said she really wanted to tackle this role again and this play because she felt, you grow and, she's starting out as a young actress then. And then, you're learning your craft as you go by. And, with all the years that she's worked, she wanted to take another crack at this. Did you feel the same way with Uncle Peck?
I did not. Strangely, I looked forward to doing it again, but not because I felt like, I actually, in some ways, doing it this time, I was sort of intimidated by that younger guy and the work he did in that. Just whatever it was, there was a connection there. And I worried that maybe I wouldn't be able to find it the same way and, live up to what we had done before. So for me, it was a little different.
So at what point during the process of this new rehearsal period did you feel like, oh, I have him again? He's what I want him to be from an actor's standpoint?
Well, I don't know if I ever feel that way. I feel like I'm on track. I'm doing my best. It is a living, breathing thing from beginning to end. And until we get to that final performance, I will, just keep trying to find him.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to the original production at the Vineyard in 1997. How did the play originally come about for you? And what were your initial reactions when you read it?
Well, in fact, I had just been offered a movie, which I'm not going to name, but it would turn out to be a really beautiful movie. And I was offered the role of a father who was a pedophile and abusing his daughter. And I could see what a beautiful movie it was. And it was a really good director. And I had to turn it down. I just didn't feel like I could do that character of that pedophile father. And not very long after that, I was just sent a script and asked if I'd come to New York and do a reading of a play called How I Learned to Drive, but hadn't been produced. The Vineyard had a slot, I guess, that had opened up in their season, and they were trying to find something to fill it. And they wanted to just hear this play. And I didn't really know Paula and came in to read, I think Cherry Jones did the original reading of Mary Louise's character. And we did a reading, and I thought, oh my God, this play is incredibly beautiful. And what a character. And I went back to Philadelphia where I live. I never thought I'd be asked to do the play. But within a couple of weeks, I got a call and they asked if I would do the play. And Cherry was not going to do it, and they didn't know who was going to do the main role. But I thought, I can't believe I'm being asked to do this. It's such a wonderful play. And then I heard Mary Louise was going to do it, and I thought, great, she's a good film actress. And then we got into production, and I found out what a great actress she is. I always thought she was good, but I really learned how good she is. So it really was, the expectations were simple. We had a beautiful play, and obviously nobody ever knows, the Pulitzer Prize was in the future, and every other kind of award was coming down the pike. But it was just simple. We were just grateful to be together doing a really interesting play. And then it became this phenomenon in New York.
And then there's your director. You're working with one of the finest directors, with Mark Brokaw. I mean, what is it like working with him, being in the room with him, and discovering a play together with him?
Well, one of the wonderful things he did, of the many wonderful things he did, was to let go of what we did before, even though it will ultimately be similar, and but to not try to reproduce what we did, to just open ourselves up to discovering this thing anew. And you're completely correct that he is a wonderful director, and like all of us, he has grown tremendously during these 25 years, and he's bringing all of that to this production. And he has a wonderful quality of being meticulous, but open. What he asks from us is meticulous, but at the same time, there's that openness to the unexpected, which is really what you want from any experience and any director, is not to be afraid of the unexpected, but to embrace it. And it's great. And the other thing I will say about it is, I think in a lot of ways he's really become a leader in terms of all of our experiences with this pandemic and the world we're in now. When we got together, we didn't rehearse at first. This time, he made sure that we spent time talking about who we are at the end of the, well, it's not the end of the pandemic, but now that we can actually come together, who are we, and what are we feeling after these 2 years as we come together? And that was our starting point. And it was great for all of us to be able to do that.
I love that. And then you also have Joanna Day, who's back, and you have a whole set of newbies in the show that are so wonderful, because I was at the show the other night. I mean, what's it like sharing the stage with all of them?
Johanna, again, we loved her then. I loved her then, love her now. And she's just rich as an actress. And she's been asked to do all these different roles, and you get to see her richness in all those different roles. And Alyssa and Chris, who are playing the other two roles, who are new, who necessarily have to be younger, so we couldn't bring the original people back. And Michael Showalter, who was in the original, has now become a big deal, famous director. So he wouldn't be doing this anyway. But they really are tremendous. And one of the things that is really fun is that the characters are not written. It's really written originally for this very white world. But Chris is a young Black actor who's really tremendous. And to have him now present in this world, it's just a great, counterpoint to this, this white Southern kind of world. So it's great.
How emotional is this role for you to play, like from start to finish? Like, are you tired at the end of a performance? Are you totally emotionally drained at the end of a performance?
It's very emotional, and I can't even think about it when we start. I can't even put my head. I do whatever I have to do to prepare, and then I have to let that all go and just be, in that car with Mary Louise at the beginning, and let the play come to me, because I don't want to even think about it, where this thing gets to. But yeah, I will say, compared to Iceman Cometh, which we did a few years ago, which was 4 hours on that stage, compared to this, whatever it is, an hour and 40 minutes. This is a little bit of a relief after Iceman, which was incredibly emotional, but this is emotional as well.
But what I love about the way that Paula has structured this play, it starts, it goes with this beautiful arc, and then it ends. I mean, you don't really have any time to think of anything in between. So I just love the way she's written this play for the journey you all take.
She is so smart about this play, and she doesn't, she it's a memory play. So it kind of goes back and forth, but there is a progression to it. Like you say, you just give yourself over to it, and then you find yourself where you find yourself, and really moving.
You know, I remember asking Paula Vogel during the original run what you and Mary Louise had given her when she saw you play these roles. And she said that you gave her the ability to feel love. Was this something you saw in her words or something you wanted to bring to Uncle Peck?
That was not a conscious thing. It's interesting that she says that about us, because that's what I saw in her. And I think that is what people were surprised by when they originally saw this play, was the love that she brought to it, to these characters, and my character in particular, who easily could have been a monster and was not. And she brought a grace and compassion and love to this man that I just really gave myself over to. This really is a love story between these two characters. That's really what it's about. And the things that happen in it are obviously disturbing, but it's a love story told with love by Paula.
Yeah. Just beautiful. We have so many actors around the world who are watching this. You have given us hundreds of memorable performances on stage, screen, and television, and they are all different. What do you look for in a project before you say yes?
Well, it could be a number of things, but really it's really a gut response to the script or the character. Now, the gut response to that thing that I told you about, that movie, was it's a beautiful script, but my gut says I can't do that role. I know this is going to be a great movie, but I just can't do it. And I have to listen to that. There are movies that, like The Hurt Locker, which it was not a lot of time in that movie, but I just knew it was a great movie. I just knew it. I knew it from the script. I knew it from the director, Catherine. There were a lot of unknowns who've now become known, but the young guys in it. But I just got it. And the character, I got it. And I said, yeah, you got to go with it. And if you got to saying, do it, do it.
Well, I'd like to mention a few of your highlights and just tell me what comes to mind, a fun story or a great memory. There are certain people that we meet in our lives early on that change everything for us and help us guide us on our path. Talk about the impact. Is it Esquire Joachim had on you with the Boston Repertory Theater? Did I say his name right?
Joachim, Esquire Joachim. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's funny that you ask about him, because he was actually at the performance last night, and I hadn't seen him in a long time. And he came last night, which was, I loved, of course. Yeah, at 17 years old, I was in high school. There was a woman, Mrs. Farini, in high school, who she also changed my life by, putting me in all those plays. And I didn't even know I could be an actor. And it's all I lived for in high school. And she introduced me in my senior year to a man who was emotionally having a hard time, who had been a legend in our school as an actor. And he had kind of a breakdown. He was trying to heal, and she asked him to direct a play at the school. And he directed me and another fellow in a production of Albie's Zoo Story. And it was really successful. And he was part of a repertory theater that was forming in Boston. And he suggested, before I'd even graduated from high school, that I go in and audition for this company. So, not ever done anything like that in my life. I went and I found a little monologue. My mother actually went and found a book of plays in the library, and there was a monologue in there for boys in the band. And I didn't even read the play. I just memorized the monologue. And I skipped school one day and went into Boston, spent the day there. And I went into an apartment on St. Vidal Street in Boston. And Esquire was in there with other members of this company. And it was the evening. And they're sitting on a waterbed and, sitting around talking to each other. And I went into the bedroom with Esquire, who was the artistic director. I did this monologue for him and another monologue from the play I was doing in high school. And when I came out of the room, he said, everybody, I want you to meet the newest member of our company. And I became a member of a repertory company. And I did the repertory theater for 6 years and did 40 different plays. And we're doing, 3 or 4 different plays a week. And it couldn't have been a greater experience.
Okay, I love that story. I mean, I think that's so incredible. So you toured around and you came to New York City and you saw your first Broadway play. Now, how life changed? What was that play? How life changing was that play for you? Your first Broadway play.
Well, the first Broadway play was it was a championship season
Yeah.
with all those incredible men in that play, and it was in the Booth Theater. I had no money. We were actually touring with something with the Boston Rep, and we happened to be in the city for overnight. So I had the little bit of money I had. I bought a ticket, and I sat in the balcony up in the very back corner seat, as far as you could get from the stage, and looked down on these men and thought, "Oh my God, this is what I want to do. I want to be like those men. I want to do this kind of play." And I got to be in that theater with Seafarer. And I went up there and I sat in that exact same seat and looked down at the stage. And I was doing this play with these fantastic Irish actors and Seafarer with Connor's amazing play. And I was one of those men. And it was great.
Because talk about a full circle magical moment to like remember where you were at the Booth Theater, because you all remember the first time you saw a show. And yeah. I remember I was at the Majestic Theater for Fiddler. I remember the smell of the Majestic Theater. I remember everything about that day. But for you to be able to go back to the Booth Theater, sit in that same seat, and then realize you're on stage with these incredible people, that was a magical show for you to do the Seafarer, wasn't it?
I completely loved that. And the audiences too. Connor, he is such a wonderful writer, and all those Irishmen bringing it together. For me to be a part of that company with those people, you can't ask for more.
Yeah. Okay. Your first big breakthrough was on television, playing Dr. Jack Boomer Morrison on the hit TV series Saint Elsewhere. How life-changing was that role and that show for you?
Well, I thought my big breakthrough was when I did Boston Repertory Theater. But then when I wound up having never done movies or television at all, I wound up starring in the first movie I ever did, Inside Moves, that Richard Donner directed. But the movie disappeared 2 weeks after its release because the Lord Great's company went bankrupt, and Universal got it and pulled it from the theaters. Nobody saw it, and suddenly I was this guy who had never been in a movie, and I was competing with every movie star in the world for a job, and I didn't get anything until St. Elsewhere came along, which I auditioned for. And I swore I would never do TV. And I just couldn't stand the idea that I was going to do television. But when I read those scripts, they were better than any movies that I've been reading, pretty much. I mean, there were some great movies, but pretty much the bulk of the movies that were being done at that time, these scripts was way beyond that. I thought this series has no chance on earth of surviving. And I'll go out to LA and I'll do their 13 episodes, and I'll come back to New York and I'll do plays, and maybe I'll do another movie again. But we wound up doing that for 6 years, and I did 10 years of nothing but television before I did another movie again.
I mean, what a cast. I mean, William Daniels is one of my all-time favorite actors. I could only imagine what it must have been like being on the set with William Daniels and just learning from him.
You know what you learn from him is what being a professional is. Of course, he's a good actor, but he's a pro. He had been working a long time, done a lot of work, but he comes to work to do his job. He's prepared, and he's great. There's no muss, there's no fuss. You do your job, and that's inspiring. That's educating.
One of your co-stars was Denzel Washington, and you had the opportunity to star opposite him on Broadway in the electrifying revival of Eugene O'Neill's The Iceman Cometh. How wonderful was it tackling the role of Larry Slade and living in the words of Eugene O'Neill?
All right, look, I didn't, when I was asked to do the play, I don't know if you want to hear all this story, but I actually was being offered The Inheritance at the same time. I did the workshop of that, but it was in England. They have to do it. The young Vic over there And I was asked to do it. But I was being asked, but it was the same producers originally. And then I got asked here to do Iceman. I thought, oh, why? Who wants to see Iceman again? Why do you want to see Iceman Cometh again? And Larry Slade, I think the role was kind of boring. I'd seen it before. And I said, I'm not sure I get it. And my representatives are like, oh no, you read it again. You got to read it again. You got to think about this. It's Denzel. I said, I know it's Denzel, but why would we be doing this? And they said, read it. And I read it. And okay. I think I get it. I think I get this role. And I couldn't do The Inheritance anyway for a number of reasons. So I regretfully had to turn that down. And I said yes to Iceman. And it was one of the great experiences of my life. Denzel, to be with him after 30 years, whatever it was, from St. Elsewhere. And also that cast, you saw it. Every person on that stage, you just want to watch them. You just want to see their character. And I was lucky enough as Larry Slade to be awake on that stage for all 4 hours. I never left the stage. And I got to watch all those performances, all those wonderful people, and, have my moments out there too. But I love that world. I loved O'Neill's writing and his amazing brilliance. So another good one.
Yeah. That was one of the most phenomenal productions I have ever seen since I've been going to the theater since I was 10 years old. I just totally was mind blowing to watch you all work up there. And you're just so brilliant at what you do. So I'd watch you could see everything through your eyes into your soul of just sitting there listening and watching these people. Absolutely brilliant, David.
Thank you.
Okay, The Green Mile remains one of my all-time favorite films. What made this film so special for you?
That book, those stories, Stephen King stories, his little novellas, that series of things that made up The Green Mile. He's done, obviously wonderful writing, and the range of his writing is almost incomparable. And there is something in the soul of that story, and that movie ultimately in The Green Mile that it's heartbreaking and inspiring. There is so much, I'm going to say it, love in that story, and inspirational kind of love, but at the same time, it's Stephen King. And when I was asked to do that, Frank Darabont called me, and he had not cast anybody else yet. And he just called me and said, I want you to do this movie. I said, why did you even think of me? But we had done something together on HBO called Two-Fisted Tales. Richard Donner actually directed. It was a series, and he had wrote the script, and I did the lead role in it. And we knew each other a little bit from then. So he just called me and asked me if I'd do Brutus. And so I said, had to read the script. He said, but I don't want anybody who's going to improvise. Do you like to improvise as an actor? No, what am I going to say? Other than, no, I don't like to improvise. No. And I read the script, and I could just feel it. That's what I'm talking about, the gut, that response. But it wasn't just me. It was like everybody in Hollywood, when they read that script, had that same response. And everybody wanted to be in it. And I got to watch all these people one by one come to be a part of it. Michael Jeter and Michael Clark Duncan and Patricia Clarkson, everybody, the list, Sam Rockwell, the list just goes on and on and on. And just, again, to be a part of that company of people with Mr. Tom Hanks at the center of it, with the great human being that he is. It turned out to be a movie and an experience that was transcendent. And people to this day watch that movie all over the world, and I hear about it all the time, that people have just seen it because of that soul, that heart, that beauty that is in there.
Yeah, I've introduced that movie to all of my nieces and nephews. I love, as they get older, we sit down and watch it. I love to watch that movie through their eyes, because they're all like, wow, this has become one of my favorite movies. And they're like, oh, I know all those people,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another one of my favorite films of yours is The Crossing Guard. Talk about working with writer, director, and co-producer Sean Penn.
Well, I keep having these experiences where, like, why are you asking me to do this movie? And it was really with The Indian Runner. because like I said, I'd done 10 years of television. I hadn't really done a lead in a movie since Inside Moves 10 years before. And apparently Sean saw Inside Moves when he was a teenager. And he wrote me a letter as a teenager, which I don't remember ever getting, but telling how much my performance in Inside Moves meant to him. And his father, Leo, was a big director, television director, and he directed on St. Elsewhere and told me, Sean says hi to you. And I was like, what, Sean Penn saying hi to me? He's the biggest movie star in the world. He's saying hi to me. And maybe 2 years later, my agent said, Sean Penn wants to send you a script. And it was Indian Runner. And he wants to talk to you. So when we did Indian Runner, we're getting to the crossing guard, while we're shooting Indian Runner, he came to knocked on my trailer door one day with a scene. And he says, I want you to read the scene. And so I read the scene and I went back to his trailer and I said, it's pretty cool. What is it? He says, I don't know. But I want you to do this when we do it. And it was the scene where Jack Nicholson and I have a confrontation inside my trailer. And slowly, that script, he kept sending me new scenes and asking me for input about the character. And I don't get credit him because he asked me if I wanted to get credit, but I didn't. And I wrote some of the stuff in there. But I got to be involved really from the very germ of that movie through the editing room, through the end. And when we thought we were going to do it, Harvey Keitel was going to do it originally because he had just become a really big deal again. And he's a fantastic actor. But he actually, after saying he was going to do it, turned it down. And Sean was like, what are we going to do? And Miramax was going to produce it. And just on a whim, he kind of sent to Jack Nicholson to see what he would say. Jack said, I would love to do it, but you got to wait a year. And so it was 4 years from the moment that Sean showed me that original scene to where we started shooting with Jack Nicholson. And the second day of shooting was the earthquake in Los Angeles. We lost our home in the earthquake, had no place to live, had to send my family back east. And we were the first film in Los Angeles that started shooting again after the earthquake and the industry could start coming back. But so that movie, Crossing Guard, there's so much in there for me that I'm happy to hear you talk about it.
Oh, I love that film. And then one of your most recent things, there's the American action horror film World War Z, where you play ex-CIA agent opposite Brad Pitt. Were you a last-minute addition to this film?
Yeah, I was actually doing a movie in Montana. I was doing an independent movie in Montana, and somebody else was going to do the role, Bryan Cranston, as a matter of fact, and he had to drop out of it. So I got, I got the script, and I had to go directly from Montana to London to do this makeup and stuff. And I thought, and also I had been doing Treme at the time, which was pretty straight. And the character, it's one of those characters in World War Z. I wish I could take it back in a way, because I wouldn't do it the same way. I just went for it because I hadn't had a character that I could just kind of go all out with. Going all out doesn't always work in the movies. Maybe fun to do, and on stage and maybe get away with it, but it doesn't always work in the movies. But I just went for it, and as an action movie, it's really one of the most fun ones I've been a part of and seen. Yeah.
Do you have? You've done so many movies and so many TV projects. Is there something you've done that might not have been as successful as you had hoped for, but it's one of your favorite pieces you've worked on, or something like that?
Well, I would say, both of Sean's movies, as much as I love doing them, it's a select group of people that actually wound up seeing them. And it's mostly people in the business and actors who come to me and say, oh my God, I love those movies. And you wish they would have a life, bigger life than that. And it's a lot of the independent ones. I did a movie with the Smith brothers called The Slaughter Roll, and Ryan Gosling. It was one of his early things. And again, it was, I have these things that are offered to me, but things that, that I'm not a big enough movie star, a big enough name. And then, they tried to get Nick Nolte to do it or somebody else to do it. It didn't work out with them. And then eventually at the last minute, I do get to do it and star in it. And, it's these movies that really, again, have so much to offer in terms of these characters and the heart of these stories that I just wish the world could share in. And it's so hard to get those movies out there. So there's those are some of the movies.
But it's interesting now with DVD and streaming services. A lot of these movies are appearing, and people will just type. I type your name in, people type actors' names in all the time. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can now watch these 12 other movies that I've never seen before. So that's the best thing about streaming services is finding movies with your favorite actors, which of course you are one of. So very interesting.
Yeah.
So David, finally, if you could sum up the best part of returning to How I Learned to Drive, what is it for you?
Well, being with this group of people, of course, and not to slight anybody, but to be with Mary Louise and to be able to continue that relationship we started 25 years ago and have it just keep growing. And having Paula give us that world to have that happen. That would be, for me, the best part of this.
Yeah. Well, you made your Broadway debut in On the Waterfront, didn't you?
I did.
Okay. I was there the Sunday matinee to see my friend, Jerry Grayson. That Sunday matinee. I was there that Sunday afternoon. And I was like, oh my God, I was going to take him out to Joe Allen and everything else. I enjoyed On the Waterfront very much. And I was just, for those who don't know, Jerry Grayson would play, I call him the gangster, or whatever it takes, the Marlon Brando character down to the river. And he actually had a heart attack that day at that matinee. And I was like, wow. And then half the audience thought he was dying in the play. Do you remember that matinee? I'm asking you, do you remember your Broadway debut? I'm just, that production?
I can't believe you were there. And when I again, this is one of those things. I've not been on Broadway. That there was such a buildup for that production. And when they were casting it, they were only looking for the best actors in the country to do this production. And they didn't want me in it because I wasn't one of those best actors. And then 5 days before they were going to be in front of an audience, I got a call saying that the actor had just left who was doing the role of the father, and they're bringing in a new director. And I only have 2 hours to think about it. Do I want to do this production or not? And I just played a priest. I didn't think I want to do a priest again. I called a friend. My friend said, "Are you out of your mind? It's one of the great roles. You have to do this." So I said, "Okay, I'll jump in." I got 5 days to go before in front of an audience. And I went in that same night, went into New York, and the company was so depressed. They're all sitting around, and the new director is there, and Jerry Grayson is among them. And they all welcomed me, and they all were kind of like, "I don't know if you're insane or not, but come and join us." And Jerry was the heart. I mean, really the heart of that company. He is such a good man. And on that Sunday you're talking about, I was under the stage, down sort of where you cross under, and Jerry was down there with the stage manager, and he was saying, "I got indigestion. I'm not feeling so great." And the stage manager said, "Go home, let your understudy do the show." And Jerry said, no, I don't know. And I said, "Well, can you drink some water? Is there something you do for your indigestion?" He said, "No, maybe I'll do that." And he went up and he did the play. And at the end of the first act, you saw it, he has the last line of the first act. And he steps forward to say his last line, and he goes face down on the floor with a heart attack. 4 doctors come up out of the audience. They're working on him. One of the doctors comes up, the cast were all there on the stage with him. The audience is in silence. Nobody's left. They're sitting there while they're working on Jerry. And this doctor says to us, "You have to be prepared to lose him. We can't get a pulse. We don't think we can save him." And they're waiting for an ambulance to come. and you can hear it trying to get through Times Square, trying to get through traffic. In 20 minutes, the audience sits there with you out there while they're working on Jerry. You finally get in there, we're there, and they put the paddles on him, and they keep doing the paddles, and eventually they get a rhythm, and they get him into the ambulance, and they take him off. We don't know if he has died or not. We don't know what's happened. And the audience went out, and they were asked, do you want us to continue with the play or not? And people said, yes, please continue with the play. And they came back in. And then I, as the priest, I have to do this very long 4-page speech about the Holy Spirit working amongst it. I could barely get through it. And then we find out after the play that he is in the hospital and he's still alive. And he lived, and thank God he did, because he is such a good actor and such a lovely man. But what an experience for the audience and for all of us and for him and for you.
I'll tell you, it was a really cold, rainy Sunday. The theater was freezing because all the doors were open to get people in. I remember that the audience was disconnected during the first act. I remember Kevin Conway saying, this is not part of the show. Is there a doctor in the house? Because people started clapping, thinking, whatever. But wow. Second act, everybody in that audience was riveted to watching that second act. I don't know if you felt it from on the stage. It was a totally different performance from the first act to the second act, but you were so great. All of you were so wonderful in that production. I know people who worked on it, like you said, there were all these bittersweet memories of this like horrible thing coming in and everybody was depressed, but it was wild to see that.
I would have people chase me down the street to say, I don't know what the critics, we had to run it for a week after the reviews came out, and they were not great. I would have people literally chase me down the street to say, we don't get it. We love this play. I just want you to know it.
Great cast, like I said, you, Kevin Conway, Penelope Ann Miller. I have the vivid, that greenish poster. I have the whole thing in my mind.
Yeah, Ron Eldard.
Yeah, Ron Eldard. I mean, all these great people. But I want to leave on, but I just love that Jerry lived on and everything else. And like I said, what a trooper. And you were wonderful. I'm sure, like I said, you probably want to have a different type of Broadway debut, but everybody was like, oh my God.
I don't. It was nothing like it. I honestly don't. Everything that went into that thing, Bud Schulberg being there, as soon as I got there, he's like, oh, I want to write you more. I want to write you more. I want to write. So I can barely learn the lines I'm supposed to learn now. And because he really wanted this story to be about the waterfront priest. That's what he wrote originally. Just to be in his presence. I wouldn't have wanted anything else to be my Broadway debut.
Yeah. Finally, I wanted to leave it up. We have actors, like I said, all around the world who are watching this. You have this incredible career. I don't know if I'm sure you don't sit and think about it, but you've done so many beautiful, beautiful parts in everything. I mean, being an actor, just what does it mean to you? Because there are so many people trying to get back. Now that the pandemic is back, so many people are trying to get into the business. Some people are trying to find their way back into the business that already have names. I mean, how do you view the business at the moment? I mean, do you ever sit and think about, what after this pandemic, what the acting business is like, especially for new people who are trying to start a career in this business?
I don't like thinking of it as, it's obviously a business. Yeah. None of us would be doing this if it wasn't a business, if people weren't paying money to sit in seats. I've had such wonderful times in my life and such excruciating times in my life. It's all a part of this business. I never thought I had a career. I was just acting. I didn't think of myself as having a career. And then I wound up doing inside moves and starring in a movie and an agent. And suddenly I had a career and there was money involved and competition with other actors. And I've had heartbreaking times and incredibly rewarding times. All of it's important. I couldn't live without any of it. And so I'm at this end, and I've seen friends who I started out with who are still struggling to get that break at 60 years old, 70 years old. They still have that faith because there is something in them that just knows they have something to offer. And we're a group of people who all believe we have something to offer. And some of us are lucky enough to be able to do it, and some it's harder. I just think we'd all look out for each other and encourage each other, and try to inspire each other where we can do it. And I'm just happy to be a part of this community.
Beautiful. David, I want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
On behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, I want to thank David for sharing his experiences, process, and craft with our fellow performers. Everybody, see something live, see a film, see something on television. And David, welcome back to Broadway with this show.
No, thank you for that welcome. I'm glad to be here and glad to talk to you.